When my sister Emily announced she was getting married, I knew my life was about to get complicated. But I never imagined my parents would demand I hand over the keys to my $2.1 million penthouse for her wedding weekend. My name is Claire Morrison, and at 32 years old, I'd spent the better part of a decade building a successful career in commercial real estate development. I specialized in downtown revitalization projects, the kind of work that required 80-hour weeks, constant travel, and the ability to negotiate with city councils, investors, and contractors who all thought they knew better than me. It wasn't glamorous work, not in the way my family understood glamour, but it was mine, and I was good at it. Emily, on the other hand, was 27, worked part-time at a boutique marketing agency, and had always been what our parents called the creative one. What they really meant was that Emily got to pursue her passions, while I got to be practical. I was the dependable one, the responsible one, the one who handled things so everyone else could dream. Growing up, this dynamic felt normal. When Emily wanted dance lessons at the expensive studio across town, I was told my community centre classes were just as good. When she needed a new laptop for her graphic design hobby, my 5-year-old hand-me-down was perfectly functional. When college came around, my parents covered her full tuition at a private art school, while I worked 3 jobs to put myself through state university. I told myself it didn't matter. Emily was the baby. She needed more support. I was capable and independent. That's what I was good at, handling things. What I didn't know then was that this pattern wouldn't end with childhood. It would follow me into my 30s, into my career, into the home I'd worked so hard to buy. The penthouse had been my dream for years. I'd bought it 3 years ago, at 29, after closing the biggest deal of my career, a $47 million mixed-use development in the historic district. The commission alone was $340,000, and I'd saved every penny of it alongside my regular income, living in a modest 1-bedroom apartment while my bank account grew. When I finally signed the papers on the penthouse, I felt like I'd arrived. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, a chef's kitchen I barely had time to use, 2 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and a rooftop terrace that made me feel like I was floating above all my years of struggle. I'd invited my parents and Emily to the housewarming party. My mother spent most of the evening pointing out things she would have done differently, different paint colours, different furniture arrangement, too modern for her taste. My father barely looked up from his phone. Emily took approximately 200 photos for her Instagram and asked if she could use the terrace for a photo shoot sometime. Of course, I'd said, because that's what I always said. Looking back now, I should have seen the signs. The first request came 2 months after I moved in. Emily was planning a birthday party and wondered if she could host it at my place. "Your apartment is just so much nicer than anywhere I could afford to rent," she said. "And it would mean so much to me." I said yes. I even helped clean up afterward. Then it was a dinner party for her friends, then a holiday gathering because Mom and Dad's place is too small, then a networking event for her agency. Each time, I told myself I was being generous, that family helps family, that I had the space and should share it. But there was always something that made me uncomfortable. The way Emily would rearrange my furniture without asking, the way her friends treated my home like a public venue, spilling wine on my cream sofa, leaving cigarette butts on my pristine terrace. The way my parents praised Emily for bringing everyone together, while never once acknowledging that it was my home making it possible. "Claire's so lucky to have such a beautiful place," my mother would say, as if luck had anything to do with it, as if I hadn't worked 16-hour days for years, as if the penthouse had simply fallen into my lap. I never corrected her. That wasn't my role in the family. Then, Emily got engaged to Marcus, a software developer she'd been dating for 2 years. He seemed nice enough, quiet, successful in his own right, clearly smitten with my sister. The engagement was announced at Sunday dinner at our parents' house, and everyone cried happy tears and made toasts with champagne my father had been saving for a special occasion. "We're thinking a spring wedding," Emily announced, her eyes bright with excitement. "Something elegant but intimate. Maybe 100 guests?" My mother immediately launched into planning mode. "The country club would be perfect. Or that new event space downtown. We'll need to book soon, spring dates go fast." I smiled and congratulated them, and tried to ignore the small knot forming in my stomach, because I knew, somehow, that this wedding would become my problem to solve. I was right. The first wedding-related request came exactly 1 week after the engagement. Emily called me on a Tuesday evening while I was reviewing contracts for a new project. "Claire, I need your help," she said, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when she wanted something big. "Marcus and I have been looking at venues, and everything is either too expensive or too basic. But then I had the most amazing idea." I felt my stomach drop. "What's your idea, Em?" "Your penthouse would be perfect for the wedding. Think about it. The terrace for the ceremony, the living room for cocktail hour, and we could bring in caterers for a sit-down dinner. It would be so intimate and personal, and it would save us so much money on venue costs." I was quiet for a moment, trying to find the right words. That's a big ask. 100 people in my home? I knew you'd say no." Her voice immediately shifted to hurt. "I knew you wouldn't want to help me on the most important day of my life. I didn't say no. Forget it. I'll figure something else out. I always do." She hung up before I could respond. 20 minutes later, my mother called. "Claire, Emily is devastated. She just wants her big sister to be part of her special day, and you made her feel like she was asking for too much. Mum, she wants to host a 100-person wedding in my penthouse. That's not a small favor. It's 1 day, Claire. 1 day to make your sister happy. You have that beautiful home just sitting there. Why not share it with family? You know how much weddings cost these days. Your father and I are already stretching our budget thin." There it was. The guilt. The reminder that I had more, so I should give more. "Let me think about it," I said, already feeling my resolve weakening. "Don't think too long," my mother said. "She needs to book something soon." I thought about it for 3 days. I made lists of pros and cons. I calculated the potential damage and wear on my home. I tried to imagine saying no, and dealing with the fallout, the hurt feelings, the family tension, the inevitable comments about how selfish I was being. In the end, I said yes, because that's what I always did. Emily was thrilled. She came over the next weekend with Marcus, her wedding planner Diane, and a photographer to scout the space. They measured, they planned, they took notes. I tried to set some boundaries. No smoking on the terrace, a reasonable end time, professional cleaners, before and after. "Of course," Emily said, hugging me. "You're the best sister ever." For a few weeks, I felt good about my decision. I was helping my sister. I was being generous. This was what family did for each other. What I would later discover was that this was just the beginning. The next request came in March, 2 months before the May wedding. Emily needed a place to store her wedding decorations, centerpieces, chair covers, boxes of candles and string lights. Just for a few weeks, she promised. Those few weeks turned into my second bedroom, becoming a storage unit. Every time I walked past it, I felt a small stab of resentment that I quickly pushed down. Then she needed to use the penthouse for a bridal shower in April. "All the venues want to charge us $1,000 for 3 hours, she complained. "That's insane." I said yes. 40 women descended on my home for an afternoon of games, champagne, and gift opening. They left behind stained carpets in the hallway and a cracked tile in the bathroom that cost me $320 to replace. When I mentioned it to Emily, she said, "I'm so sorry. I'll pay you back." She never did. In late April, my parents called a family meeting at their house. I arrived to find Emily, Marcus, and my parents sitting in the living room with serious expressions. "Claire, we need to talk about the wedding budget," my father began. I sat down slowly. "Okay, we've run into some unexpected costs," my mother explained. "The catering is more expensive than we thought, and Emily really wants the photographer she fell in love with. But he's not cheap. Your father and I have contributed everything we can, but we're about $12,000 short." They all looked at me, expectantly. "We were hoping you could help out," my father said. "As a wedding gift to your sister." I felt sick. $12,000? "You have a good job," my mother said. "And you're not paying for a wedding of your own. It would mean so much to Emily." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, Claire. This is my dream wedding. Please." I wanted to say no, I wanted to point out that I was already giving them my home for free, a venue that would normally cost at least $8,000 to $10,000 to rent. I wanted to remind them of all the times I'd helped Emily, all the times I'd been expected to be the practical one, so she could be the dreamer. Instead, I said, "Let me check my savings." Something inside me felt wrong, but I pushed it down. I transferred $12,000 to my parents' account the next day. My mother called to thank me, but spent most of the conversation detailing the upgraded menu they could now afford. That was $12,000 on top of the implied $9,000 venue cost. I was now $21,000 invested in this wedding. The final request came 3 weeks before the wedding. Emily wanted to move into the penthouse for the week leading up to the ceremony. "It just makes sense," she explained. "That way, I can oversee the setup, meet with vendors on site, and not have to stress about commuting back and forth. Plus, all my stuff is already there." "For a whole week?" I asked. "You can stay too, obviously. It's your place. But I might have bridesmaids over for some late nights. You know, wedding prep stuff. I'd hate for you to lose sleep if you have early work meetings." She was essentially asking me to move out of my own home so she could use it as wedding headquarters. I felt something snap inside me. Something small but significant. For the first time, I said, "I need to think about it." Emily's face fell. "What's there to think about? It's a weekend. A whole week out of my own home." "Wow." She stood up. "I can't believe you're being like this. After everything we're doing to make this wedding perfect. After Mum and Dad are putting themselves in debt for me. The least you could do is let me stay in your extra bedroom for 1 week. You're already storing half your life in that bedroom, and I gave you $12,000, and you're having the entire wedding in my home." The words came out sharper than I intended. Emily stared at me like I'd slapped her. "So you're keeping score now?" she said quietly. "That's what this is about? You want me to know how generous you've been? That's not what I... Forget it. I'll figure something else out. I always do." She left. My phone rang 5 minutes later. My mother, of course. "I don't know what's gotten into you," she said, her voice cold. "Emily is planning the most important day of her life, and you're nickel, and diming her over a few days in a home that's too big for you anyway." "Mom, it's not about... You've always had more than her, Claire. You've always had the stable job, the financial security. Is it too much to ask that you share that with your little sister?" I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "I've been sharing. I've been helping. Then help now. Let her stay in the penthouse. Be the bigger person." I hung up feeling hollow. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of the home I'd worked so hard for, wondering how it had stopped feeling like mine. The next morning, I texted Emily. "You can stay for the week." Her response was immediate. "Thank you. You won't regret this." Looking back now, I should have seen what was coming. But I was too deep in the pattern. Give, accommodate, sacrifice. That's what good sisters did. Little did they know, I was about to become very good at something else entirely. The breaking point came exactly 12 days before the wedding, on a Wednesday afternoon I'll never forget. I'd taken the day off to move some essential items to my office. I decided to essentially camp there during Emily's wedding week, occupation of my penthouse. As I was packing a bag with clothes and toiletries, my phone rang. It was Marcus, Emily's fiancé. "Claire, hey. Listen, I have kind of an awkward question." He sounded uncomfortable, which wasn't like him. "What's up? Did you know Emily's been telling people that the penthouse is, well, hers?" I stopped packing. "What do you mean, hers?" "I overheard her on the phone with a vendor yesterday. She was giving them her address for a delivery. And then, at the rehearsal dinner planning meeting, she referred to it as our family's penthouse. I thought maybe there was some arrangement I didn't know about." My heart started pounding. "There's no arrangement. It's my home. I bought it. My name is on the deed." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Yeah, that's what I thought. Look, I don't want to cause problems, but I thought you should know. Some of her bridesmaids have been posting Instagram stories from there, talking about Emily's amazing place. I thought it was weird. After we hung up, I did something I should have done weeks ago. I checked Emily's social media. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her Instagram. There were dozens of posts from my penthouse over the past 6 months. But it wasn't just the posts, it was the captions. Brunch at home with my girls. Can't wait to start married life in this space. Hosting Thanksgiving in our family penthouse this year. Home is where the heart is. Not once did she mention it was my home. Not once did she tag me or credit me. She'd essentially claimed ownership of my $2.1 million penthouse on social media, allowing thousands of people to believe it belonged to her, or, at minimum, to the family. I felt sick to my stomach. This was beyond using my space for events. This was appropriation. This was erasure. I immediately called Emily. She didn't answer. I called again. Again. Finally, on the fourth try, she picked up. Claire, I'm in the middle of a fitting. What? Why are you telling people the penthouse is yours? Silence. Marcus called me, and I looked at your Instagram. You've been pretending you own my home. I haven't been pretending anything, she said defensively. I didn't correct people when they assumed. What's the big deal? You said I could use it. Use it, Emily. Not claim it. Not tell vendors it's your address. Not post pictures implying you live there. You're overreacting. It's just social media. Nobody cares. I care. My voice cracked. I worked for 10 years to buy that home. I earned every dollar. And you're erasing that. Like it means nothing. Oh my God. Here we go again. I work so hard. I sacrifice so much. We get it, Claire. You're successful. You don't have to rub it in my face constantly. I was so shocked I couldn't speak for a moment. You know what? Emily continued, her voice rising. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with money and success, you'd understand what it's like to want something beautiful in your life. Not everyone can be perfect like you. I never said I was perfect. I just want credit for what's mine. It's one weekend, Claire. One wedding. Then you can go back to your perfect life in your perfect penthouse, and we'll all get out of your way. She hung up. I stood in the middle of my bedroom feeling like the walls were closing in. That's when I noticed something on my dresser. A manila folder I didn't recognize. I opened it. Inside were papers, official-looking documents with legal headers, a residential lease agreement, with my address, made out to Emily Morrison and Marcus Chen, for a 2-year term starting June 1st, 11 days after the wedding. Monthly rent, $0, signed by property owner. The signature line had my name typed beneath it, but I'd never seen these documents before, let alone signed them. My sister had created fake lease papers that would allow her to claim legal residence in my penthouse. That's when everything changed. I sat down on my bed, the papers shaking in my hands, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt something stronger than guilt or obligation, or the need to keep peace. I felt rage, pure, clarifying, righteous rage. They had gone too far. They hadn't just taken advantage of my generosity. They'd actively plotted to steal my home from under me. Emily was planning to move in after the wedding and establish residency, making it legally complicated to remove her. I pulled out my phone and made a call I should have made months ago, to James Rothstein, the attorney who'd handled my penthouse purchase 3 years ago and who'd since become a trusted friend. James, I need your help, and I need you to be very, very thorough. For the next hour, I explained everything. Every request, every dollar, every boundary crossed. I showed him the fake lease documents. I showed him Emily's social media posts. I explained the wedding plan and the week-long stay that was clearly meant to become permanent. James listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Claire, he finally said, I want to be very clear about something. What your sister has done, creating fraudulent lease documents with your forged signature, that's not just inappropriate. That's illegal. That's fraud and forgery. We could pursue criminal charges. I don't want to send my sister to jail, I said immediately. I understand, but you need to understand the severity here. She was planning to steal your home using falsified legal documents. This isn't a family squabble. This is a crime. I felt tears running down my face. I just want my home back. I want them to understand it's mine. Then here's what we're going to do, James said, his voice taking on the crisp, professional tone I'd heard him use in negotiations. We're going to document everything. We're going to secure your property. And we're going to make sure everyone understands exactly who owns that penthouse. and what the consequences are for attempting to fraudulently claim it. How? Leave that to me, but I'll need you to do something difficult. Can you act normal for the next 12 days? Can you let Emily think everything is fine? I wiped my eyes. Yes, good, because they have no idea what's coming. That night, I texted Emily back. I'm sorry for overreacting. Of course you can use the penthouse however you need to. I want your wedding to be perfect. Her response came immediately. Thank you. I knew you'd understand. Love you. I stared at those words. Love you. And wondered how long she'd been planning to take my home from me. What I didn't know then was that James was already in motion. While Emily was picking out wedding favors and confirming floral arrangements, my attorney was building a case that would change everything. They thought they were so clever. They thought I was too soft, too accommodating, too desperate for approval to ever stand up for myself. They were wrong. The wedding day arrived on a perfect Saturday in May. The sky was cloudless. The temperature was 72 degrees, and my penthouse had been transformed into an elegant wedding venue. White chairs lined the terrace, flowers cascaded from every surface, and a string quartet played softly as guests arrived. I played my role perfectly. I wore the bridesmaid dress. Emily had chosen a dusty rose colour that washed me out, but photographed well. I smiled for pictures. I helped bustle her dress. I pretended that everything was normal. Emily looked beautiful. I had to give her that. She'd always been the pretty one, the charming one, and today she absolutely glowed. As she walked down the makeshift aisle on my terrace with my father, I saw genuine love in Marcus's eyes, and I felt a small, sad pang of regret for what was about to happen. But then I remembered the fake lease documents. I remembered years of being taken for granted. I remembered my mother's voice saying, "You have more, so you should give more." The ceremony was lovely. Emily and Marcus exchanged vows they'd written themselves. My mother cried. Guests dabbed at their eyes. For 27 minutes, it was a perfect wedding. Then came the cocktail hour. Guests mingled in my living room, which had been cleared of most furniture to accommodate high-top tables and a bar. A pianist played in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvre. Emily and Marcus moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and posing for photos. That's when James Rothstein arrived. He was dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase, and he moved through the crowd with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. He found me near the windows and leaned in to whisper, "Are you ready?" I nodded. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought everyone could hear it. James made his way to Emily and Marcus. I watched from across the room as he introduced himself. I saw Emily's confused smile. I saw her glance around, looking for me, probably wondering why a lawyer was at her wedding. Then James said something that made Emily's smile freeze. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. Several guests nearby had stopped talking and were watching with curiosity. That's when I walked over. "What's going on?" Emily asked, her voice tight. She was looking at me now, and I saw the first flash of fear in her eyes. "This is James Rothstein," I said calmly. "He's my attorney, and he has something important to discuss with you." "This is my wedding," Emily hissed. "Whatever this is, it can wait." "Actually, it can't," James said smoothly. He raised his voice slightly, addressing not just Emily, but the growing circle of guests. "I'm here on behalf of Claire Morrison, the owner of this property, to address a legal matter that has come to our attention." More guests were gathering now. My parents pushed through the crowd, my mother's face tight with alarm. "What is this?" my father demanded. James pulled out more papers from his briefcase. "These are fraudulent lease documents that were created using Miss Morrison's name and signature without her knowledge or consent. They purport to grant Emily Morrison and Marcus Chen residential rights to this property, a $2.1 million penthouse that belongs solely to Claire Morrison." The room went silent. Even the pianist stopped playing. Emily's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "These documents were found in Claire's bedroom," James continued, his voice calm, but carrying to every corner of the room. "They bear a forged signature and false information. They were clearly intended to establish fraudulent residency following this event." "That's insane," Emily said, but her voice wavered. "Claire, tell him this is crazy. All eyes turned to me. My mother's eyes were pleading. My father looked furious. Emily looked terrified. "It's not crazy," I said quietly. "I found the papers 2 weeks ago. I didn't sign them. I never agreed to let you move in. You created them without my permission. Why are you doing this?" Emily's voice broke. "Why are you trying to ruin my wedding?" "I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm protecting my home. The home I worked 10 years to buy. The home you've been pretending is yours on social media for months. The home you were planning to take from me." Marcus stepped forward, his face stricken. "Emily, what is he talking about? What lease documents?" Emily turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "It was just a backup plan. In case we needed a place to live after the wedding. Claire has so much space, and she's never even here. And I just thought..." "You thought you'd forge legal documents and steal her property?" Marcus said, his voice hollow. James pulled out his phone. "I have screenshots here of Miss Emily Morrison's Instagram posts claiming ownership or residency of this property. I have vendor invoices listing this as her address. I have text messages discussing plans to move in gradually after the wedding. This was a coordinated effort to establish fraudulent residency rights." My mother finally found her voice. "Claire, please. We can talk about this later. This is your sister's wedding day." "No," I said, and my voice didn't shake. "We're talking about it now, because I've spent 32 years being the reasonable one, the flexible one, the one who sacrifices so everyone else can be happy. And I'm done." I turned to address the crowd. Some of them were my colleagues, people who knew exactly how hard I'd worked for this success. Others were Emily's friends, who'd attended countless parties here, probably thinking it was her place. "This is my home," I said clearly. "I bought it, with money I earned. My name is on the deed. Emily doesn't live here. She never has. She doesn't pay rent here. She never has. This wedding was a favor one I agreed to, because I love my sister. But it was never permission for her to claim my property as her own." James nodded and produced another document. "This is a formal trespass notice. Effective immediately, Emily Morrison and Marcus Chen are required to vacate this property. All items belonging to Emily Morrison must be removed within 72 hours, or they will be considered abandoned property and disposed of accordingly." "You can't do this," my father said. "This is family. Family doesn't forge legal documents." James replied calmly. "Family doesn't commit fraud. What your daughter did is a criminal offense. Miss Morrison has chosen not to press charges, but that option remains available if necessary." Emily was sobbing now. Several of her bridesmaids had come to her side, throwing accusatory looks at me. But I also saw other guests nodding slightly, their faces thoughtful. They were doing the math, realizing what Emily had tried to do. "There's more," James continued. He pulled out a manila folder. "Miss Morrison has documented all financial contributions to this wedding. $12,000 in direct payments, an estimated $9,000 in venue value, $320 in property damage from previous events, numerous other expenses related to storage, utilities, and wear on the property. The total comes to $21,320. He handed the folder to my father. "This is an itemized invoice. Payment is due within 30 days. My father's hands shook as he opened it. "You're invoicing us? For your sister's wedding? I'm invoicing you for the use of my property and the money I gave under false pretenses," I said. "If I'd known Emily was planning to steal my home, I never would have contributed a dime." "False pretenses?" My mother's voice was shrill. "We're your family." "Then treat me like family," I said. "Not like a bank. Not like a free venue. And definitely not like someone whose property you can steal with forged documents." Marcus had stepped away from Emily. He was staring at her like he didn't know her. "You were going to let me move into a place you stole from your sister. You were going to start our marriage with fraud." "I didn't steal anything," Emily cried. "It was just we needed a place to live. And she has so much. She has what she earned," Marcus said quietly. "And you tried to take it." James checked his watch. The wedding reception was scheduled to end at 11 p.m. It's now 6:15. I'm advising all guests that they must vacate the property by 8 p.m. The owner, Miss Morrison, will be changing the locks this evening as a security precaution. Guests started murmuring. Some began gathering their belongings. A few of Emily's friends were crying. My parents looked shell-shocked. Then something unexpected happened. My Aunt Linda, my mother's older sister, pushed through the crowd. She'd been sitting quietly at a corner table throughout this whole confrontation. "Good for you, Claire," she said loudly. Everyone turned to stare at her. "I'm serious," Linda continued, looking at my mother. "I've watched you enable this girl for 27 years. I've watched you take advantage of Claire's good nature over and over. And I've bitten my tongue because it wasn't my place. But forging documents to steal someone's home? That crosses every line. Linda, stay out of this," my mother snapped. "No." Linda walked over to me and put a hand on my shoulder. "Your daughter worked her ass off for this place. She earned every square foot of it, and you treated it like community property because you've never respected her boundaries. Well, now she's setting them, and it's about damn time." Several guests nodded. I saw my colleague Robert, who'd attended as my +1, giving me a subtle thumbs up. Emily's wedding was effectively over. Guests began filing out, some stopping to squeeze my hand or murmur support, others avoiding eye contact entirely. The catering staff looked confused, but began packing up at James's direction. My parents approached me one last time. My father was visibly shaking with rage. "You've destroyed your sister's wedding. I hope you're proud of yourself." "I'm protecting my property from theft," I said evenly. "If Emily hadn't created fraudulent documents, we wouldn't be here." "She's your sister," my mother said, tears in her eyes. "How can you be so cruel? How can you ask me that?" I felt my composure finally crack. "How can you watch your daughter try to steal from me and ask me why I'm defending myself? How have you watched me give and give and give for 32 years and never once ask if it's too much?" My mother had no answer. By 8 p.m., the penthouse was empty. James had supervised the departure of the last guests and vendors. He'd ensured that Emily had collected her personal items under his watchful eye. He'd documented everything with photos and timestamps. When the door finally closed behind him, I stood alone in my penthouse, my home, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The space was a disaster. Chairs everywhere, wilted flowers, half-full champagne glasses. It would take days to clean and return to normal, but it was mine. Act 5. Resolution and reflection. The fallout was swift and severe. Marcus called off the honeymoon that night. By Monday morning, he'd called off the marriage entirely. Through mutual friends, I learned that he'd told Emily he couldn't trust her, couldn't build a life with someone who'd commit fraud so casually, couldn't look at her the same way after watching her try to steal from her own sister. Part of me felt guilty about that, a very small part. But then I remembered the fake lease documents, and the guilt faded. My parents didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. When my father finally called, it was to inform me coldly that they'd paid the $21,320 invoice in full. "We're paying for Emily's mistake," he said. "But don't expect us to forget what you did to her." "What I did?" I repeated. "Dad, she tried to steal my home. She made a mistake. You humiliated her in front of 100 people on her wedding day. She humiliated herself by committing fraud." He hung up on me. The relationship with my parents remains strained. We speak occasionally, brief and formal conversations, about nothing important. They've made it clear that they see me as the villain in this story, the successful daughter who couldn't spare some kindness for her struggling sister. I've made peace with their perspective. I can't control how they choose to see me. Emily sent me a single email, 6 weeks after the wedding. It was long and rambling, alternating between apologetic and accusatory. She admitted the lease documents were stupid and desperate, but insisted she'd never actually intended to use them. She claimed she just wanted to feel secure about having a place to live. She blamed her actions on stress and pressure, and the unfairness of me having so much, when she had so little. She ended with, "I hope someday you can forgive me, but I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you did." I didn't respond. Some of Emily's friends sent angry messages calling me heartless, selfish, cruel. They painted Emily as a victim of my success and vindictiveness. I blocked them all, but other messages came too. From colleagues who'd been at the wedding and respected how I'd stood up for myself. From friends who'd watched me be taken advantage of for years and were relieved I'd finally drawn a line. From Aunt Linda, who called every week to check on me and tell me how proud she was. And from Marcus, surprisingly, he sent a brief text 3 months after the cancelled wedding. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner. You deserved better from your family. Thank you for showing me who she really was. Before I made a legal commitment, the penthouse returned to normal slowly. Professional cleaners handled the post-wedding disaster. I replaced damaged items. I changed the locks, updated my security system, and made it clear to the building management that only I had authorization to grant access to my unit. I hosted a small dinner party 2 months after the wedding, with Aunt Linda, Robert, James, and a few other close friends. We toasted to boundaries, to self-respect, and to knowing your worth. You know, James said, raising his glass, I've worked with you for 5 years, and I've never seen you as powerful as you were that day. Not closing a $1 million deal, not negotiating with city council, but standing in your own home and saying enough. It was terrifying, I admitted. The most important things usually are, Aunt Linda said. Today, I'm 33. My career continues to thrive. I was promoted to senior director last month, overseeing 3 major development projects across the city. I'm considering adopting a dog. I've always wanted one, but told myself I was too busy. Maybe it's time to stop telling myself what I can't have. The penthouse is still my sanctuary. I come home to those floor-to-ceiling windows and feel grateful every single day, not just for the view or the space, but for what it represents: 10 years of hard work, sacrifice, determination, and the refusal to accept less than I deserved. I don't regret what happened at the wedding. I wish it hadn't been necessary. I wish my family had respected me enough that I never had to defend myself so publicly. But I don't regret protecting what was mine. Some people have asked if I think I was too harsh, if maybe I could have handled it privately, after the wedding, without the public confrontation. My answer is always the same. They counted on my silence. They counted on my desire to keep the peace, to avoid confrontation, to maintain the family facade. They planned their theft, knowing I was too nice to stop them. If I'd handled it privately, Emily would have still been married. The fake lease would have been harder to contest once they'd established residency. My family would have continued to see my boundaries as negotiable. Sometimes, kindness looks like cruelty to people who are used to taking advantage of you. Looking back now, I can see all the moments when I should have said no. All the times I swallowed my discomfort and told myself I was being generous when I was really being used. I don't make that mistake anymore. Last month, a colleague asked if she could hold a small client meeting at my place. Your penthouse is so impressive. It would really help close this deal. I said no, politely, but firmly. No explanation, no apology, just no. She looked surprised, but accepted it. And our working relationship didn't suffer at all. Turns out, people can respect boundaries when you actually set them. I've learnt some hard lessons from this experience. Lessons I wish I'd learned earlier, but I'm grateful for nonetheless.